Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today we're going to do a sketch of a Valentine type picture, something that I think would be really cute to use for a Valentine's card. I'm just going to work in a sketchbook here because I don't need another Valentine's card, but that would be a great last minute Valentine that you can make for your sweetie if you want to. And it's going to be a cupcake with a strawberry, chocolate covered strawberry on top. So I thought that would be really cute. I also want to let you know I have a Valentine sale going on in my shop, my online school. If you use the coupon code 40love, you can save 40% on any class at lindsayweirich.teachable.com. So check that out if you've been wanting to get a class. That deal is good until or through Valentine's Day. So just a couple more days on that if you wanted to take advantage of it. As you can see, I've got kind of a rounded rectangle down here. And I am just kind of putting a little muffin top up here. And I am going to make another curved line. I'm using a pencil because I think it will be easier for you to see this than the Colorase that I've been using, which are those erasable colored pencils. But you could use, obviously, whatever you prefer because, you know what works best for your technique. This video is sponsored by jerrysartorama.com. I'm going to use the Turner watercolor, which I haven't had this palette out in a long time because my desk real estate keeps shrinking and shrinking. And that palette's kind of big, but I have a little bit of room I can mix right with the colors, and I've got this little dish here that I can mix into if I need to. So we got these three kind of puffy layers of frosting. Then we're going to draw our strawberry here, which is like a rounded triangle. Okay, just get that basic shape in there. We do have some leaves, which I think is nice. Like if you're going to do chocolate covered strawberries, if you can keep the leaves on them, I think it's so pretty. And really honestly, I think that's the only good thing about chocolate covered strawberries is how they look, because I'm not a fan of chocolate mixed with fruit, just like too much acid. I don't like chocolate and coffee. I don't like chocolate and fruit, just ugh. But they look so pretty, don't they? I know I'm in the minority there. You can let me know in the comments below if you like your chocolate and fruit mixed, or if you are a purist like me. Oh, I did want to show you something really cool. I've used these a couple times, and I don't think I usually mention them, but they are these skinny little erasers, and they're by Tombow. They're the Mono Zero erasers. There's a wide one and a skinny round one. So there's a wider rectangle one and a skinny round one. Those are so handy for just when you got to get like this little hairy line out of the way or something. They're a soft white plastic eraser, so they're really good for watercolor paper. It doesn't want to mar the surface because they're real gentle. So a little recommendation there for you. Like I can go and erase right up to the good line that I want to keep and get rid of anything else, which is really nice, and it doesn't seem to damage anything. The brushes I'm going to use are the Mimics from Creative Mark. I brush away my crumbs. I like this big one to brush away crumbs more than actually painting. It is good for painting, but only if you're painting larger or wetting your paper, but it's so good for those crumbs. And now we're going to do, I want to do the chocolate on the strawberry. I do have a reference photo, but I'm going to tell you I am changing it up a little bit. It has white chocolate on the strawberry, and I'm going to do a dark chocolate. But it's pretty similar, so I don't think that'll hinder you at all. Just a little division between that. Okay, and you got to get this drizzle on here. And when you're doing the drizzle, make sure that you keep in mind that it's going on these different shapes. Okay, so you want it to kind of, kind of conform to the edges of the frosting that the chocolate is drizzled over, because the drizzles were done after the strawberry was put on the cupcake. Man, this is so pretty. I love drawing food. I think like a dream job would be like illustrating a cookbook, or maybe just a recipe in a magazine or something. I think that would be so fun. Okay, there's one. I think I'm just going to do another little drizzle, kind of wrapping around that way. Another one right here. This will help define the forms And I really love that because it helps you get that shape a little bit more, and it just adds a little bit of realism to the berry. Get that double line in there. Take your time. You know, you could pause the video, you could look at the reference photo and draw that way, or you could just kind of pause as we're going if that is helpful to you, and kind of really look. I want to make sure that's just kind of not a perfectly smooth area. I want it to have a little bit of thickness. And then we'll have one just like the first start of the drizzle up here. Just now we can see some indentations for some seeds, but it's not a lot. So I mean, it's up to you if you want to. They don't even look yellow. They look almost, they look darker. You can sketch them in there or you can leave them. That's completely up to you. So here we've got our baking paper here. And sometimes I like to just kind of throw in a little bit, like you can even have it within another baking wrapper if you want to. Sometimes that looks really pretty. You see that sometimes like on baking shows or magazines. I'll do that because, you know, your baking paper gets very translucent, the paper you actually bake in. And just pull some lines down from the little pinked edge that you draw there. And then at the bottom, sometimes you'll have like, kind of like an area where the wax paper, cupcake wrapper, or whatever has kind of, you know, filled in the edges, so it's not perfect. And I think it's those little imperfections that we sketch that make something look realistic. Okay, and there's not a lot of shadow in this picture. It's pretty evenly lit as far as cast shadow on the table. So I'll probably make a little something up because I don't like to not have any shadow. But I'll wait to see what we've got going before I do that. And I'm just going to go through and erase any lines that I don't need, any lines that I know that I don't need. All right, there, I think we've got a pretty good start. Brush off your crumbs. The reason I like to use a brush, in case you're not aware, is that, you know, especially in the winter, I wear lotion because it's so dry, and then if you touch your paper and stuff, sometimes you'll get that grease from your hands onto the paper. I'm going to use a number 8 round. And I would say, like, if you can only afford one brush and you want to try these mimics, they're not that expensive, but, you know, they're not cheap. They're a few dollars. They're not crazy, but usually, you know, you place an order online, you're going to get more than a brush, right? A number 8 round is probably going to be the most versatile brush. You can get that in one of their multi-packs. I really recommend the value set if you can swing it. I think it's between $30 and $40, I think. Sometimes they put them on like a really good sale, so always keep your eyes open for that. But it's really nice because you get such a nice variety of brushes, and I've been using them a lot for the past few years, and I haven't had any issues. The number 4 brush in that set has gone a little dull, but I don't know if it just maybe, it never really seemed to have a really sharp point to begin with, so I don't know if that was more of like just a round and not a pointed round, because I typically don't use the small brushes all that often, so to be honest, I didn't really pay that much attention when it was new. But yeah, then a number 8 round is such a good brush, regardless whether you get the mimics or not, but definitely if you're looking to try like one of these brushes, that would be the one that I would recommend. My first recommendation would be go for the value set, but if you can't, then get a number 8. I'm going to grab a paper towel here because I got a little paint on that icing, and let me see if I can go around it a little bit better. Here we go. I didn't pre-wet my paper, And I really wouldn't if you're working on a watercolor greeting card. Those tend to be really heavily sized. So I'm painting this just as I would on a watercolor greeting card. I'm leaving the area that's kind of like the wrapping, the wax paper wrapping, less concentrated. So I'm actually even going to blot a little bit of that off. And I'm going to take some burnt sienna and mix it in with my yellow ochre. I'm trying not to get too much water in there because I know my paper's wet, and also I don't mind there being a little bit of texture in there because it is cake. Cake has a nice cakey texture to it. You get that little bit of browning at the top. So the muffin top area of the cupcake is going to be browner than what was like below the pan. If that makes sense. And I'm just doing a tapping motion. Now this would be actually a good thing to do with that number 4 round. I might switch in a second when I run out of paint on the brush. Brushes hold so much paint, which is really handy. I think I want that to come out a little bit more, so I'm just going to go ahead and do that right now. I'm going to bring that right down to the top of the wrapper on that side. Look for those imperfections, because that's what's going to make it look realistic. Dab, 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 dab. I'll link to all these products that I used from jerrysartorama.com so you can find them if you want to. Alright, I'm going to switch to that number 4 brush since I've been talking so much about it. And I'm going to take a little bit of ultramarine blue and add it to that mix so I can have a little bit darker of a color. And it cools it down a little bit. And I'm just going to do some dabbing on the edges. Should dry a smidgen lighter, but if it just looks way too dark, then you can just tap it with your paper towel. Okay, so never be like, oh no, I've just ruined it. No, you haven't ruined it. Watercolor is so forgiving. I'm actually going to bring this down a little bit and almost cover the pinked edge of the cupcake wrapper on this side. I think it looks good if it's not completely uniform. I'm going to try to keep this to around half an hour. We'll see, we'll try. But just know that you can push further with it and you could take more time. If you're going to spend more than a half an hour on it, I'd probably recommend going with like a cotton watercolor paper as opposed to a watercolor greeting card, just because you can only do so many layers on that heavily sized watercolor greeting card paper, and you might get to a point where you're like, oh shoot, I wish I want to be able to put more, but I'm lifting up my other layers or something like that, and it could be frustrating for you, so I don't want that to happen. So I say match the paper you're using with the amount of time you're going to put into it. You don't want to use really crazy expensive paper for a doodle, but you also don't want to spend, a ton of time on really, really cheap paper that's, you wouldn't go spend 2 hours painting on a paper bag, or the back of an envelope. You'd get some proper paper. And kind of keep that in mind. I'm going to take some of this, a little more burnt sienna, a little more yellow ochre. Now I'm going to go into the wrapper area, down towards the bottom where it's a little bit flatter, those little kind of like divots that we sketched in, or that we sketched in at the beginning. I'm going to fill that in with that color because that's where the cake has been like pressed into the corner of the pan, and it is right up against the edge of that wax paper, and so it's making contact and appearing darker. And then the other places where you're going to see it darker would be like the dips in the fluting. I'm trying to keep my strokes pretty straight, but I have a tendency to curve them. So towards the middle, I might have to turn my book here. Like in the center, any lines going up would be pretty straight, and then it's going to start to tip towards the edge. It'll be influenced by the edge of it, because this is a cylinder here, and it's tapered, so it's gonna be influenced by the edge that it's closest to. And these are the darkest streaks. I like to get my darkest streaks in first because they'll look real awkward, and that's fine because it will get better. All right. This is the worst it's going to look, and then it's going to get a little bit better when we do more of a yellow ochre on its own. Nothing is really on its own, though. I keep mixing it at that same spot. I like this palette. It just takes up some space on my table. In case you're wondering why I don't paint with this one very often, it's just the amount of space it takes up. I had overfilled some of the wells, too, and so it made such a mess. The lid stuck to it, so I had to clean that up, and I finally stopped being lazy and did that a couple weeks ago during my my January clean out. I always try to spruce the place up in January, you know, as soon as my Christmas crafting is done, because I do framing and do all kinds of stuff, and then there's work, and you know, it's the busiest time of my business, it's the busiest time personal life, and yeah, by the time that, you know, December 26th rolls around, I take a day off, and then I'm like, okay, time to clean this mess up. Okay, I'm just kind of going in, streaking in some of this yellow ochre. I'm not even like, because this is like a quick one, I'm not like being too fussy about where I put it. I just want some contrast and some variation. Okay, so, you know, don't fuss about it. Now, let's do some, that's dry enough. Let's do some pink. We're going to take rose red, and we're going to water it way down. And if you find that you can't water it down enough, now I didn't put my white in this palette, so I might regret that, but if you find you can't get your paint watery enough, and it's just way too bright, then that's a time to use your white, mixing white, your Chinese white watercolor, because that's what it's really designed for. It's not designed for bright highlights, but it's more designed for thinning down a paint that you want to make pastel, but you don't want it so watery that you can't control it, and you want it to have like a little bit of body to it, which frosting, if frosting has a little bit of body to it, it's not going to look bad. Some things, if you add white to it, because it is going to take some flow away. This isn't an issue here because we're not looking for flow. That's not characteristics we need in this picture. But if you were painting like loose florals, a real big picture, and you want your colors to flow together, I would say just put some more water in it, you know, to get it to lightness. Don't add water because you want those colors to flow. Oops, just somehow dropped some water there. But something like this, you could totally add white if you're having a difficult time. My reference photos open on my computer, and my sketchbook cover is like on the keyboard. I'm just hoping that I don't accidentally hit some weird button and like have something crazy happen. Fill this in here, and we might get some noises. I've tried to plan this so that I can be wrapped up filming before the workmen get back from lunch break. They're working on some construction, so I don't know. I think they might have taken a short break today because I'm hearing some noises out there, but hopefully they don't translate on video. I have a couple watercolor tutorials already recorded, but I was like, oh, but I want to do something Valentine-y. So I'm like, I'm gonna see if I can sneak this one in, because I figured, you know, there's gotta be people out there that are like, oh, I need a Valentine card. Now I'm gonna take some of the rose red, just less diluted, and oh, you know what? I think I'm gonna go to my smaller brush. I'm gonna go to the number 2 round for this. And we're just gonna swirl that right in the paint. I really like this Turner paint from Jerry's Artorama. It's a lot like Holbein, if you like Holbein. It's quite inexpensive. You can get it in individual tubes. You can get it in sets. There's a 18 color Try Me set that are like 5 milliliters. So if you want to try that without spending a lot of money, because they go on sale, that goes on sale quite often. I've seen it as low as like $20. It's usually around 30, I think, but it gives you a really good feel for the brand before you invest a lot of money, because you get a lot of colors to kind of play with in just like really small tubes. but there are a few colors there that I really don't recommend that are in that kit. So that's the only downside. They have these Mayan colors that are really weak and just, are not, I don't know, they weren't enjoyable for me to play with. Maybe other people like them, but I didn't anyway. But even considering there's like those 3 Mayan colors that I don't think are very nice. All the other colors are really nice, so yeah, that's a nice way to try it out. This rose red color though is not in the basic set, so you could get it individually, or you could do without it, or use something from another set, or get one of the other sets that have it in it, like the 15 milliliter tube sets, I believe, have the rose red. If you know what you want, though, if you know what you like and what you use, you're probably better off just to buy tubes of what you like in whatever brand is your favorite, because then you'll use it. It won't be like a mystery of like, oh, am I going to use that? Or, all right, that was easy. Okay, now what I like to do to test if my painting is dry or not is I just kind of like touch it with the back of my hand. And if it doesn't feel any cooler than the rest of the paper, then I know it's dry. It should feel room temperature. If it feels cool, then it's still wet, and that feels dry. I haven't put a lot of water in. I haven't pre-wet anything, so things are drying pretty quick, even though I'm working in the basement. I'm going to use some burnt sienna just on its own, honestly, and I am going to fill in the chocolate area, and I'm not going to make it too dark yet. It's going to be kind of like a medium brown, because then I'll want to go in and put some shadows in later. So just kind of go in and get that brown. Just be careful to paint around the white. Now, if we do make a boo-boo and we get on the white, yeah, that's what a gel pen's for. That's what a white paint pen's for. We don't need to be too fussy, but if we can avoid that, then all the better. But if we have to, then hey, that's fine too. I have no problem with that. Some artists have a problem with that. I used to have a problem with that, to be honest. Then I realized that, why? What is it hurting if I want to use a little gel pen? I'm not entering competitions for my watercolor work. If you were, that's something you want to consider, but I'm painting because I love painting. I teach painting because I love sharing what I know. And I don't love using masking fluid. I don't love things that are fussy and fiddly. I think you just got to do what brings you joy. It's your art. So sometimes I'll keep it completely pure watercolor. Other times I'll do mixed media. I like mixed media an awful lot. Lately I've really been loving markers. I think they're very similar to watercolor where they're transparent, but they're kind of a different beast, and I find it so fun to learn different techniques with my markers. Kind of obsessed. I think because they're quite challenging. It's quite a learning curve, and I think I find that very, I don't know, it really scratches my brain good. Okay, so we're gonna have to let that dry before we do any other glazes on that. Well, I've got this burnt sienna on my brush. I'm going to swirl it in that mix that I used on the cupcake. And I'm going to kind of spy with my little eye and see if I see any areas that could be a little bit darker there. And go ahead and darken them up. So my poor little puppy has been very upset with the construction. And she's been hiding out in my daughter's room. You might hear, if you hear a little tip-a-tap, that's her just kind of like pacing around in her room a little bit. We've been on 2 walks today. So like if it's just me and her at home, I walk her extra. And like if I'm going to have a cup of tea, I don't just sit down and, check my email. I'll just walk with her, have my tea, and go out, take her for a walk. And she has a very hard time settling down. She likes the workman, but she just does not do well with noises. She doesn't like the vacuum. She doesn't like any mechanical noise. She doesn't even really like to ride in cars. So I kind of wonder, she was a rescue, and she had to come up from Georgia, and I live in Maine, so it's a long haul. And I wonder, I would think she would have been too young to remember any of that and be bothered by it, but my mother thinks that, maybe that trip up just bothered her. I always make sure only take her for a ride, that we're going someplace fun, but she seems to get a little, you know, just doesn't like it. Okay, let's do the green. The Turner set has a beautiful sap green. It's very vibrant though. It's very much like the Winsor & Newton sap green. It's super bright. So you want to kind of keep that in mind, and if that's too bright for you, then you can, you know, add other colors to it to darken it. You can make it more green with phthalo blue rather, or you can mix in some Viridian. Sometimes I'll add a smidgen of like a Pyrrole Scarlet to it because it's that intense. You want to kind of not rack the color a bit sometimes, but I'm actually going to use it on its own for the base colors on my leaves here. Still using that small round brush. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? Let's grab a little bit of, actually you could really use any yellow. I'm going to go with permanent yellow. And I'm going to add a little bit of that right here to the center of them. And then I'm going to blend the green in, and it'll just give it a little bit of a lively lift to the color. I'll give a little dimension to the leaves. I can, but and yellow blends pretty easily, so I can do that. Do them all at once and then just kind of blend into it. So, you know, work quickly, you'll have no problem. If you find that it's drying too fast on you, you can do them one at a time. But then you gotta clean your brush. You gotta clean your brush after every petal. That's kinda, I'm lazy. I don't want to clean my brush after every petal. I don't know about you. Oh my gosh, we're up to 26 minutes already. That's alright. We don't have too much more to do on this. That's gonna be fine. I'm just gonna finish up with these guys. And then that will be a good time for you to take a break if you need to. Sometimes you take a little break, you can look back and see, you know, what a picture needs a little bit better. So we'll be back in a second and we will finish it up. Go have yourself a little break if you want to. It's a great time to pause. Okay, I went through and I erased a bunch of the pencil lines that were remaining, so that way I wouldn't have to like look at them while I was painting. I have enough information down already. And now I can go and add some shadows and start to make this kind of come to life a little bit more. I'm going to start off with a little bit of a shading from the icing onto the cake, and I'm going to do the burnt sienna and ultramarine blue again for that. You just need a touch of ultramarine blue to make that burnt sienna just a little bit darker. And I'm going to try to get a nice fine line up against the cake, and then just kind of stipple it out by tapping. Just kind of tapping it down a little bit like that. And do it there and kind of tap it down. And that's just going to give it a little bit, give it a little bit more depth and dimension. And go up here. Ooh, I like the way that looks already. Nice. Nice, nice, nice. I actually let this painting rest a little bit. I went and had a cup of tea and had to take a phone call and all that jazz. And I came back and I'm like, oh, yeah. Let's get back to this. This is fun. Let your worries sail away on a lovely strawberry cupcake. There we go. So you can see it just kind of makes it seem a little rounder, doesn't it? We're going to have some noise in a second. I know I'm so nervous about that. It's like, oh my gosh, people are hearing my noises. Other people don't have furnaces making noise in their house. How will they ever accept me for having having noise in the background? I just, you know. Okay, we're going to do the shadow on the icing here. I took a little ultramarine blue and added it to that rose to have kind of like, I don't really want it gray. Well, it's going to give me kind of purpley color. I just wanted it to kind of still have some color in it, but just be a little bit darker. So I'm just very, very gently adding a little bit of color there at that seam where you've got kind of the, you know, swirly of, that's what the swirly of frosting sounds like apparently. I'm just going to tap that. We can have a little bit up against that icing there, and you know, you can kind of tap a little bit, and actually if it ends up being a little dark and you've tapped some of the little taps, it could look like it may have like you know, like a strawberry jam or a raspberry jam in that frosting. Wouldn't that be good? Making me hungry. only thing sweet I think I have in the house is a couple protein bars. And some fruit. I don't really keep sweets around. And I'll go do the same up here. Now that's a little darker, like there's a little too much contrast there, but we're gonna come in with a little bit of a lighter shade in a minute, so don't fret. Life's too short to fret about art, right? I don't need to fret about this. I'm sure you got other things in your life to save your frets over. Save your frets for. Don't need to be fretting about this. I'm a major fretter, so take my word for it. I don't fret about my art though. Because if it's a card, you can mail it away and not see it ever again. If it's a sketchbook, you can turn to the next page. If it's a canvas, you can paint over it or throw it in the bonfire. That's one of my favorite things to do with paintings that I am frustrated with, I don't like. Throw them in the old bonfire. Get a little, I'm just going to kind of tap a little bit while I still have this paint on my brush. A little goes a long way. Tap, tap, tap. Okay, so now that we've gotten a little bit of that color on each layer of frosting, we can add kind of a mid-tone, and for that it's going to be that rose red on its own. Not as watery as our first wash, but not as dark as what we did there. So I'm actually going to load up this kind of inky, let's see, I'm going to bring my palette over just so you can see. Like that, just inky like that. I'm going to load my brush off, but then I'm going to blot it, get the extra off the belly of the brush. And then I can go in. It's pretty wet, so it should fade. It should dry a little bit later. I know it looks real dark, doesn't it? I think it'll be just fine when it dries, though. I think it'll lighten up. I'm just trying to do this little bit of a stippling technique so that, I guess you could probably dry brush too. And I'm going to go over that shadow a little bit to soften it. Just kind of bring it down. Dry when your brush is dry. It's actually real easy because you can just kind of scumble it over. Just kind of drag your brush around and just kind of get that texture you need really easily. Actually, using masking fluid to mask off the icing would have worked really well because it's not that fine of detail. I just got some on the icing there. I'm not going to worry about it though. Try not to do that on yours. A little dry brush squiggly strokes. That seems to work the best. So load up your brush, blot off the excess, and then... Oh, that's too much. A little bit up here. Okay, let's see. I feel like I need a little bit, something, what that down a little bit. I need a little bit of something to bridge that. That's a little bit too much contrast. Okay, so my pink is a little bit pinker than the icing in the photo, but I'm alright with that. That's fine. Okay, so I'm going to take some burnt sienna And I want to mix, I want a fairly good amount of that. I think you can see that on your page. On your screen. If you're seeing that on your page, that's probably on your sketchbook. That means you're doing it too. Hey, good for you. If you're seeing this on your palette, well, excellent. That means you're working. Good job. I like that. That's what I like that. I like to hear people are doing the, I mean, hey, I love that people are watching the tutorials, but I love hearing that people are doing the tutorials. I don't feel like my hands are very steady right now. Oh boy. I've had too much tea and coffee today. And my brain is in a kind of a little bit of a stressy place. So, but painting helps. Painting helps when your brain's in a stressy place. So this is kind of our darker shadows on the chocolate, so you're going to go up against the icing because it's going to cast a little shadow, and it's just going to be darker because it's the side of the strawberry. The light's more hitting down from the top. It's a fairly diffused, well lit shot, so there isn't like a lot of distinct shading. Maybe just a little sliver on that edge, but not much. Okay, now let's go up to the strawberry leaves. We're going to take that sap green that's super bright. We're going to add a little bit of that ultramarine blue to it, and the reason we're doing that is because we've been using that color green. If you had been using a different green, you would use a different blue. You would use a different, you know, say you'd been using phthalo blue or you'd been using cerulean blue or something. You'd use whatever blue you'd been using to darken it, just so that you're not adding a weird color at the end. You want to, you know, I really believe your paintings will look better with a limited palette, and that if you just kind of keep recycling the same colors, your paintings are going to look a lot more professional, and they're going to look a lot more put together. Darker at the top. You can drag in as much of that darker green as you want. It's completely up to what you're looking, what you like the look of. And I might go in a little bit more of just a sap green on its own too. A lot of times, like I like to get my darker shadows in first. I'll get my lights, and then I'll get my darks, and then I'll see, do I need to add some midtones, because it's really easy to get stuck in the mud, get stuck in the midtones, and not be able to lighten it or brighten it. So I try to get those darks in, the lights and the darks in first, and then see what I need to do beyond that. Alright, gonna take some of the ultramarine blue and burnt sienna, try to make a gray, so they're gonna be pretty equally balanced. In fact, I'll do that on my little dish here, make sure the bottom of the dish is clean. Pretty good. So that's ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. I'll try to tip it so you can see. That's going to be a good shadow for my the edge of my icing. Oops, got into the brown. I think I see some white gel pen in my future. It's a real subtle color. Oh, I think you know what? Shoot, I think I splotted some on the background. Oh well. That's kind of on par for my day right now. Alright. Oh, we need a little bit more. It's because I shouldn't have my palette up there. I should have that nowhere's near where I'm working, especially not off to the left, because I'm not left-handed. Alright, I'm going to add a little bit of shadow. And you know what? I'm just going to do it with this brush because I don't want to get... I'm just going to do a really tiny... really tiny shadow right there. And then I can add a little bit stronger right up against the object to make it just settle a little bit more. And let's see, is there any place else I want that? Maybe a little bit of that dark shadow color up here in my strawberry leaves. And just a little bit of it on the edge there. And it's also pretty dark right under the icing. Now if you want to add any details with some colored pencils, you can. I'll leave that up to you. I think I will do a little bit of highlighting with a gel pen. Let's just zap this real quick with the heat tool just to make sure we don't have... So what can happen if you go over wet paper with a gel pen is that it can dig your paper up. We don't want that to happen, so we'll just blast this real quick with a gel pen. With a heat tool. Oh my gosh, words are very hard for me today. Oh, I think we all have those days, right? Where it's like, I can't find the right word. Okay, so yep, that's a workable one. We'll first use it as whiteout here, and we will we'll get some of those areas where I mistakenly kind of went into the icing here. I need to smooth anything out, I can do that. Also on the top of the cupcake wrapper, I want that kind of wax papery looking look. Yeah. And on some of the raised fluting, you could bring some of that in as well. Some of the areas that appeared to be sticking out. Okay, up on the strawberry itself, you can have some highlights. And then on the leaves, and of course this is optional. You could do that with a colored pencil if you don't want such a strong look. And like if I wanted to highlight the icing, I would go in with a colored pencil because then I would keep that texture that I had going on. See that? Just kind of rounds it out, and you can lift up on the pressure when you want it to fade out. It helps give you kind of a creamy look. Oh yeah, that chocolate should probably have a little bit of a highlight. But to make it look like a matte, chocolate's usually kind of matte, not glossy, so I can do that with the white pencil. I can do a little bit of highlighting on the cupcake. I actually probably want to do that. I'll do some with white, but I think I'll probably do a little bit with some yellow ochre. I'm sorry if I'm mumbling. Oh my gosh. I know I should stop apologizing. I do end up apologizing a lot. Sorry you're watching this tutorial, guys. Man, that's rough. A little bit of this kind of burnt sienna color. There's certain colors I use a lot. You can tell because they have pencil extenders. White, burnt sienna, indigo blue. Those are terracotta. Those are all very, very often used colors. Those are the ones I'm buying open stock. And I think I will grab a little bit of a golden color. Golden orangey color. Going very, very lightly, just catching a little texture. I think this would be really sweet on a Valentine's card. And, you know, you can do a little bit more if you want to. That's completely up to you. If you feel like you need a little bit more definition or shadow anywhere, then you go ahead and add it, because you're not the only one that can really make that decision. Everybody's artwork can have different stages where it's like, I went too light on step 3. I need to do something now to make up for that. Or I didn't go dark enough, or I went too dark and I need to soften that. You know, everyone's going to have different parts in art where they need to alter it to make it fit their vision. So if you want to do more, go ahead. If you want to add some collage elements or anything, it's up to you. But I'm going to leave mine just like that. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If so, please give me a thumbs up before you go. I really appreciate it. Happy Valentine's Day. I want to thank Jerry's Artorama for sponsoring this video. I will have all the supplies I used linked down below. And if you'd like to take advantage of my 40% off classes going on through Valentine's Day, I will have a link in the video description for that, as well as a coupon code. So thank you so much for watching. And until next time, happy crafting.